Yeah. I look at doing that, my grass all the time.
Make a note, because otherwise I will forget.
Grass.
Ready whenever you
Good evening, everyone. Calling of the meeting of the Finance Committee of the City of Wausau to order this Tuesday, May the 14th, 2024 at 5:15. A quorum of the committee is present. First item on the agenda is the minutes of the previous meeting of April 23rd, of 2024. A motion would be in order to approve the minutes. If we could have a motion on the floor, and then we'll
I'll make
correct.
that motion.
There is a motion.
Second it.
There is a second. Any comments or questions with regard to the minutes? Yes.
Yes, Mr. Chair, under discussion and possible action approving the proposed capital projects approved by the DNR environmental loan, I didn't ask the question, why weren't they ordered, why weren't the projects ordered principal forgiveness? I asked, why would we move ahead on either of the two projects when they hadn't been given principal forgiveness? I think there's a difference in thought there. And then Mr. Lindman answered my questions, so I would just like to have that corrected if I could.
So, well, the process would be to bring them back, correct it.
You can make a motion to accept those with the changes.
So then we can accept the amendment with those corrections to the original motion.
Yes, uh-huh.
Is there a second to the amendment? There is a second to the amendment. So the motion would be to accept the minutes as amended. Any further comments or questions with regard to the minutes? Hearing none, all in favor of said motion to approve the motion to accept the minutes as well as the amendment to those minutes. All in favor of said motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion is agreed to, and the minutes thus are accepted with that amendment. The next item on the agenda would be the presentation of the solar array recommendations by the Solar Array Task Force. We have the Solar Array Task Force with us this evening. Chairperson Henke is with us for the presentation.
Thank you, Alder Gislin. So the date's a little out of date. This is the last, what we presented last to the community, and there were a few changes, but you'll still see some community things in there. But we'll dive right into it. It was in your packet. So a little history on the Solar Array Task Force. We started back in spring of 2023. I was appointed the chair. Paul is our vice chair, who is also our community representative. John Robinson is our water commission representative. Susan Woods is our accounting person. And I don't see Jay, but Jay Colwell was also on there. And we met for the goal to make a recommendation to the water utility and to the city council on what to do with that property to the east side of the new water plant. So our timeline, part one, we spent most of the summer last year collecting solar background information, effectiveness, lifestyles of panels, utility costs, needs, electricity costs, funding sources. We actually got an FAQ together, and that's on the website, and I hope our sustainability committee could use that at any time, and as technology changes, I would love to see that updated from time to time. So. But we did a lot of work, and it's all on the city website and available for everyone. Go to the next one. The second part, after we figured out what solar could and could not do, we developed size and location and configurations and gathered public input on the options. And then part three, we evaluated the options and stacked them against each other and came up with a recommendation for one project to move forward. As you can see, the community acceptance presentation was end of May 2024. And that's not why we're here today, but that's why we were there that day. So we'll go on. So today we'll discuss kind of the options that we came up with and our thought process behind those options. Discussion on the committee's recommendation for the final size and the location. And then, again, that's left over from the Q&A for the community, but I'll lead a Q&A with you guys if you have any questions. So we'll start with scenario 1. So this is what we deemed the well house. There's a well house, 2 well houses right there. The size of the array would be 1 megawatt. That's kind of what we came up with as far as what we thought could fit on that property. The installation cost for a 1 megawatt unit right there was $4.2 million. There's different models as far as how much electricity is going to increase or is projected to increase over the next years. If you look back historically, it's been about 3.5% the last 10, 15 years. So we modeled 3%, 5%, and 7%. So with a 3% electricity cost increase, we had an estimated payback of 19.9 years. And if you went really aggressive to 7% annual cost increase, that lowered it to 15.3 years. Along with electricity increasing, we got a map of how the power is currently used at the water utility. If you looked at the map, me with my background, I immediately recognized it as they were running off peak. They were running at night when electricity cost was more. Best bang for your buck makes a lot of sense. If you have a solar array producing electricity right next to it, it's better to use that power right away. So that's what I mean by optimizing when the water plant would run. So run during the day versus night, and use as much of that solar energy as you can right away and not have to take the penalties of selling it to the utility and then buying it back later. So if you optimize the way the water plant ran, so the initial one was running as is today. If you optimize the way we ran the water plant, that would lower to 15.5 years. And if you're, again, super aggressive, 12.4 years. This plan used the maximum space to the east side of the water plant. So that was one of the pluses for it. So this is scenario 1 alternate. As we were discussing a 1 megawatt size installation, the contractors and consultants ran some numbers, and we had always talked about getting the best return on our investment. And they discovered that if you put a 750 kilowatt, we'll just round up to make it easy, installation, it actually gave you the best return on your initial investment. It lowered the installation costs from 4.2 to 2.57 million. Again, using the different electricity cost increases, the payback went 19.3 years to 15 years. And then if you optimize the way the water plant ran, it lowered it to 12.9 and 10.9 years. This was found to be the best return on investment that we could get for a solar array at this location. And then we ran 2 more scenarios. So scenario 2, just to compare apples to apples, 1 megawatt, similar costs, similar paybacks. This was to move it as far away from the trees on Bugby and away from the road on Tierney. The issue is it falls into the Village of Maine and crosses that line. So not only would we have to approve it, but it would also have to go through the Village of Maine. And so that was one of the downfalls to that one. And then scenario 3, we wanted to completely remove it from view, so you wouldn't even be able to see it from anywhere. That meant moving it well to the north, taking down a bunch of trees, doing a lot of land prep, and adding a big access road. Again, we stuck with the 1 megawatt size, just apples to apples. The only issue is it increased the cost. It almost doubled it. I mean, that's wire size, that's power loss, that's access road length, trees coming down, site prep. And again, the cons there, it sits away from the water plant and just increase the cost way too much. So we'll go to the next one. So when the committee was making our recommendation, we took 3 factors into account. Factor 1 was the city strategic plan and mission statement. So last year, I think last spring, we approved the city strategic plan. One of the chapters was called Innovative Public Services. And one of the objectable and measurable items in there was to invest in solutions to ensure environmental sustainability for generations to come. Another chapter was strong regional alliance, and another objective in that chapter was support and lead in green and eco-friendly efforts and initiatives for a cleaner, healthier, and sustainable environment. And then I copied and pasted that straight from the last quarter's, the mission statement, last quarter's community newsletter. And it says enhance our living environment, so I felt that fit in here also. So the second factor that we took into account was very early on, we just set a goal of 10 years to pay back on the initial investment. We thought that was reasonable and actually manageable. We would love to pay for the installation without affecting the water utility rate and the levy rates. That's a big reason that we put in this ARPA request that would help alleviate all that. And then we wanted to also make the water plant more resilient and less reliant on the utility. So if catastrophe hit and the electric utility went down, it would be really cool if we could still run the water plant during the day and fill up our reservoirs and get water to people in the city. And so that was one of our considerations too. And then factor 3, community acceptance. So we had multiple meetings about this. Almost every meeting we held had public input sessions on it. And this is a list of the things that came out of it. So no trees on Bugby Avenue will be removed. A berm will be built along Tierney Road to limit the street view. There was a meeting where we had a prairie expert come in, and that went over really well. So if we could establish a prairie around and under the solar panels, that would be awesome. Construction will be based at the water plant to limit interference with Tierney and Bugby and the surrounding community. And then after construction, if an access road is required to go from the water plant to Tierney, I just make sure that we tie it in as far to the north on Tierney Road as possible to stay away from the 4 or 5 houses there. And then again, we heard a lot of comments about we don't want to see an increase to the water utility bill or the levy rates. So with all of that, the final recommendation that we came out with was to go with scenario 1, alternate. The first factor, it uses the property for a green and eco-friendly purpose. We looked at what else could we use this property for, and the big thing that came back was selling it and putting it into subdivisions, or there's a big housing shortage, so residential. But we thought a solar array there actually met a lot of the city's ambitions, and it was a good location for it. Factor 2, it uses the property to build resiliency into the water plant, and it also gave us the best return on investment. And then factor 3, it meets the surrounding community's concerns by keeping the array as far away from the trees and the road as possible and as close to the water plant as possible, and leaving a lot of buffer field there. And then we also made a comment during our last meeting too. This is kind of just the beginning. Design it with the future. Cody, can you go back one? Thank you. Design with the future in mind. Solar technology is always changing. Panels are getting bigger. Panels are probably going to get smaller and produce the same amount of power. Batteries are just starting to scratch the surface of their potential. If we want to completely disconnect the water plant from the utility, batteries will be needed. Right now it's cost prohibitive, but who knows, 20 years from now, it could be a thing. So we wanted to make sure that we made that comment too. And again, just reiterating all of this, we passed the motion to recommend option with thoughts for the future. So make sure we plan for additional electrical generation if technology gets there. Make sure we have a plan for battery or energy storage, and then always keep in mind the existing environment and the surrounding communities. Also, with this recommendation, just a little off this side, it made me feel better. We had another presentation April 18th. If you go back and look at the packet, it was another contractor that gave a presentation, and their numbers were really similar to this. So it made me feel really confident that we were going in the right direction. And then also, as far as for the future, if you look in the packet, a lot of the construction costs are around, 275, 280, 290 for dollars per watt produced. And I've had other people come up to me and say they're doing similar projects and they're actually able to get those numbers down around $2 a watt. So this is just kind of the first step in finding funding for it. If this goes out and gets competitively bid, I feel like there's going to be a lot of interest in it, and I feel like the numbers will only go down. I don't see this costing more than what the packet says. So is that it, Cody, I think? All right. So that's what I had.
Okay,
I'll
other
take
questions?
any questions? or-
From Finance Committee members? Yes?
Just a comment, it's obvious to me that the Solar Array Committee has done a tremendous amount of work on this and given it very thorough thought, so thank you.
Yep. Also, this ARPA request, I think it's 800,000. I know the Water Commission moved it forward to start talking about maybe going out for bids and stuff like that. I think there's an opportunity where if some other projects stumble or we have issues completing them, we could probably get these. I think this is a project that we could get signed at least by the end of the year, and make sure that we're actually using those funds for advancing the city.
Any further comments or questions with regard to the presentation? Thank you very much,
Yeah.
Alderperson Hinkie.
Yep, thank you.
Thank you. Moving on then to the next agenda item is the discussion and possible action regarding ARPA funding request and related budget modifications for Wausau Waterworks Solar Array. And the ARPA request is in your packet. Usually, the rating scale is also in your packet. Usually this is the initial look at, and then we will rate it. For the next meeting, we will consider it. So we put this request on hold until the next meeting after you're ranking it according to some information in your packet, and then we'll proceed at the next Finance Committee meeting. Is there any, Marianne, if you,
I was just gonna, sorry. I was gonna add that I did have an update on our ARPA monitoring that shows how much is available at this time, and kind of an update on where we are on the projects and a comprehensive list of the projects.
so you'll be seeing the ARPA request again in more of a final nature at the next Finance Committee meeting.
And I guess the other thing I would add is, we have talked at finance in the past is, you don't necessarily have to fund 100% of a request if you don't want to. You can always make a partial funding and then look for alternate revenue sources for the balance of it too, so.
So that's our plan for the ARPA request. Then the next item on the agenda is the discussion, possible action approving the intergovernmental agreement for law enforcement services for the 2024 Republican National Convention in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. This is also in your packet. We have, I see the chief. Yes, you're welcome. Go ahead.
Sure. This is In this particular case, we have an intergovernmental agreement from a liability standpoint, clearly outlining what the roles and responsibility of each organization are. But as a little background, the state with federal dollars several years ago recognized that no individual agency has the staff available to deal with civil unrest and didn't have the staff appropriately trained to do that throughout the state. So we, in combination with the Sheriff's Department, were identified as a location. So we have 8 to 10 members of this team. The Sheriff's Department has 8 to 10 members of this team, with the idea being that when needed, we will travel throughout the state wherever that's necessary, and when the time comes that Wausau needs people, that they will come serve us. Generally speaking, this wouldn't come to the council if it didn't require an intergovernmental agreement, and the agreement exists because Milwaukee is paying the cost of each officer to include travel, food, lodging, as well as their wages.
Any comments or questions with regard to the intergovernmental agreement? The chief, a motion would be in order for the approval of the intergovernmental agreement. A motion would be in order. There is a motion. There is a second. Any comments or questions with regard to the motion? Hearing none, all in favor of said motion, say aye. Opposed? Motion is agreed to, and the intergovernmental agreement will move most likely to the city council. Thank you. Moving on, next item on discussion, possible action on the budget modification of the $25,550 for the Riverside Park soil remediation. Anyone? Mr. Lindman?
Good evening.
Thank you.
This is the next step. There was some detects on some additional sampling that was taken in Riverside Park. In conversations with the DNR, they would like us to do not only some additional sampling in that area, but also some additional soil removal to try to find the extent of where those exceedances are, that contamination. So this gets us to the next step that the DNR is requesting us to do. So.
Thank you. Any comments or questions, Marianne?
Oh, I was just going to add for the committee's benefit, the city has what we call our environmental fund. That fund was established back because of the Holtz-Krause landfill. So we received a lump of money to defray costs for managing that site. When that facility was turned into soccer fields, basically our obligation to maintain that was eliminated, not to maintain the Holtz-Krause site, but to maintain the funds in a specific reserve. So we have been using those for other environmental items such as this. But obviously, as we do that, there's not new money being added to that fund, and so we are slowly eroding that balance. It's now under $1 million. And at some point, we'll be paying as you go. We'll have to establish a budget each year to deal with environmental issues, including the Holtz-Krause landfill. So just want to make sure that people understand this is not a bottomless well that we can always dip into, and that there will be future requirements that we'll have to fund on an ongoing basis through levy.
Thank you. Are there any questions of Mr. Lindman? Hearing none, a motion would be in order then for the budget modification for the Riverside Park. A motion and a second. Any comments or questions with regard to the motion? Hearing none, all in favor, said motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion is agreed to, and that moves on. Moving then on to the next item on the agenda, which is discussion, possible action regarding safe drinking water loan closing and payoff of note anticipation note 2023A.
So last year in June, we did temporary financing with People's State Bank in the amount of $17,550,000 to help us fund the GAC construction project. And that was 1 year to give us time to work with the state of Wisconsin for permanent financing. So we are approaching the June 27th, I think it is, when that 1 year note will mature. We will be ready for refinancing. So we have, the state is an awesome opportunity for us as far as helping us finance this project. The interest rate is better than we would receive on the open market, but they have kind of more of a strict calendar, so we have to meet their calendar requirements. But, and I don't, Eric, join in if you want, but the calendar is presented just so that you're aware of when that financing will occur, so that, everybody's prepared. I think we went through this at the last meeting. Like I said, we borrowed 17.5 million because some of that funding that the state is providing is going to be loan forgiveness, just about, I think, shy of $7 million, right? That really it's now a $20 million, but we're getting almost $7 million of it paid for. So instead of having $17 million worth of debt, we'll have about $13 million. So it will reduce the debt load, and like I said, it's a better interest rate than we would receive if we went out into the bond market. And we will also, they work on a draw schedule. So, typically you borrow your money and you have your interest accumulating right at the moment that you borrow the funds. The state works on a draw schedule. Loan forgiveness typically is offered first. So, the first almost $7 million of expenses, we won't have to pay back. We do obviously have incurred expenses in this last year. So those will be, recovered. I don't know if you want to answer.
Yeah, no, Mary Ann, I think you did a good job of summing this up, and when we look at working with the state and the DNR and applying for these funds, right, with the principal forgiveness, there's a lot of steps involved. And so we have the Department of Administration, the DNR, Ellers, we have bond counsel, we have a lot of entities at play here. And so trying to get this time schedule and stuff put together is sometimes a little bit challenging, but I think we're here because we kind of have this timeline, and so we anticipate closing on these in June, or at least this one. And just to let you know, there's several other projects as well that we're getting principal forgiveness for, which is basically grant dollars from the DNR on projects that staff has applied for and done a very good job. So those will be coming before the Finance Committee in the next couple of months as well with schedules, so.
And really, all of the projects that we're talking about, working with the state, either are benefiting the water utility or the sewer utility.
Right.
The city will be going out for general obligation notes sometime this summer.
Yeah.
We typically wait until a little bit later in the summer, so.
Are there any, thank you, Eric. Are there any questions with regard to the safe drinking water loan? Hearing none, a motion would be in order to approve moving this forward. There is a motion. Is there a second? There is a second. Any comments or questions with regard to the motion? Hearing none, all in favor, said motion, say aye. Opposed? Motion is agreed to. Thank you. Moving then on to discussion, possible action to approve and adopt a budget modification of American Rescue Plan Coronavirus State and Local Fiscal Recovery Fund funded projects to supplement existing lead line replacement study.
So we, last year in 2023, we had done a lead service line replacement on our construction projects, street reconstruction projects on the private side. And we did a pilot study to do that, to understand, best ways to communicate, best ways to to really engage the homeowners, get inside their homes, verify lead service lines, verify our inventory. And so that was about 70 or so lead service lines in 2023 that we did. That we had it budgeted for construction, we had it budgeted for the pilot study. And the construction, we used less money, but the pilot study, we used a little bit more with the community outreach. And so this modification is really to take the money from what we would have used for construction and bring it over to the pilot study to kind of even out those projects, yeah, for formally, so.
Hearing any comments or questions? No comments or questions, the motion then would be in order for the adoption of the budget modification. There is a first and a second. Any comments or questions with regard to the motion? Hearing none, all in favor of said motion, say aye. Opposed? Motion is agreed to, and the budget modification will move forward. Thank you. Moving then on to the final item on the agenda, discussion and approval of the 2024 Community Development Block Grant Program year allocations. Trust Tammy is,
Not as tall as Eric. Hello, for those that you don't know me, I am Tammy Stratz. I'm the Community Development Manager. And the city of Wausau is lucky enough to be considered a grantee for the federal funds, Community Development Block Grant funds. So each year we receive these funds. Obviously, because they're federal funds, there's a lot of strings and rules associated with them. We have a 13-member Citizens Advisory Committee board that listens to applications, typically in the fall. And we do a guesstimate of how much funding we believe we're going to get the next year. We use that guesstimate to make some recommendations as to who's going to receive the funding. Then we wait to find out how much funding we're actually going to get from HUD, which we just received last week. So that's why we're here today. We were $224 off, which I think is the closest we've ever been. We anticipated $600,000. We're getting $600,224. So in your packet, there's a memo that kind of explains block grant funds, where we can spend the money, where we can't spend the money. The majority of the funds need to go towards low, moderate income households. So either it might be a public facility or public, like a street reconstruction or some sort of reconstruction project in a lower income area. Or it needs to, like with our homeowner rehab program, 100% of those clienteles have to qualify, have to own a home in the city of Wausau and be under a certain income bracket to receive these funds. And in that case, it's a low-interest loan to assist with remodeling, not remodeling, repairing the houses. There's public service activities, which means typically working with a nonprofit who works with low-income clientele. So based on the applications that we received, there's a chart in the packet that indicates who made applications, how much they applied for, and what our Citizens Advisory Committee recommendations were. Once we received the $224 extra dollars, because we're hoping to do some acquisition of properties so we can do more affordable housing projects, we'll put that $224 towards acquisition. So our next step is receive your authorization, then we take it to council for their authorization, and then we can submit it to HUD. Once they approve it, then we physically get the money or are able to draw upon the money, and then we can start spending. So right now, we're just in the approval process before we can receive the funds. Any questions?
yes?
May I call you Tammy?
You sure can.
Tammy, on page 34 of your action plan, it is in your report that one of the impediments are language barriers and outreach to non-English speaking residents. I know there have been numerous requests for in-language meeting notifications for important community development events. And I would point out, it is a federally funded department. So, to my understanding, there are still no appropriate in-language notifications for these meetings, and that needs to start occurring, so,
What we do is we reach out to the agencies that help us put out the notifications. We speak with the Hmong American, for example, the Hmong American Center quite a bit, and they've pretty much told us, don't put anything in writing because they don't read it, and there's three different dialects. So as long as they know about it, they are able to spread the word. Same with the, well, not same with, but the Hispanics population, they've told us, just let us know of what's going on and we can spread the word. So that's how we've been doing it. If there's a better way, or if you know of a better way to get it out there, I'm always love to hear it.
is it possible to reach out to Hmong Radio?
I've been working with Yi on that too, yes. Yes,
Okay.
we haven't done it yet, but yes, that's a great
And
point.
I think on the notifications that are on the website, it would be very appropriate if there was Hmong and Spanish language. It's great to say there's interpreters, but how do the people who can't read English know that there's a meeting?
It's a good
So
point.
I think there needs to be tremendous progress in that area.
And interesting that you said that. I just had a meeting with our health department where we collaborate on a lot of projects, and we've been talking the same thing. How do we do this more effectively? So I agree.
All right, thank you.
Any further comments or questions with regard to, then a motion would be in order to approve the 2024 Community Development Block Grant Program year allocations. A motion would be in order. There is a motion. We do have a second. Any comments or questions with regard to the motion? Hearing none, all in favor of said motion, say aye. Opposed? Hearing none. So the allocation is approved. The motion is agreed to, and we'll move that on also. So thank you very much,
Thank you.
Tammy. With that, we come to the conclusion of the agenda items. The motion to adjourn would be in order. There is a motion, and there is a second. All in favor of the said motion, say aye. We stand adjourned. Thank you very much.